Buenas and half a day. The Committee on Environment, Revenue, and Taxation Procurement is calling this virtual public hearing to order. It is now 9:04 a.m., Monday, October 26, 2020. Notice of this morning's virtual hearing was provided via email to senators, stakeholders, and local media on October 19th, the 5-day notice, and October 24th for the 48-hour notice, thus meeting the requirements of open government law. I'd like to acknowledge the senators that have joined me here today. Speaker Munya Barnes.
Good morning.
Good morning. Senator Kelly Marsh Titano. Senator Amanda Shelton. Senator San Augustine, of course. Senator Luis Munya. Senator James Moylan. And Senator Tello Taitigui. Okay, the purpose of this virtual public hearing is to receive testimony on Bill number 384-35 COR, sponsored by Senator Joe S. San Augustine. It's an act to amend Section 3123, Section 3218, Section 3300A, Section 3413, Section 3414, and Section 3433, and to repeal Section 3428 and 3432, all of Chapter 3, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, relative to updating and clarifying statutes concerning licensing, sales, and service of alcohol beverages. The committee will continue to receive testimony until 4 p.m. on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. Please address testimony to Senator Sabina Flores Perez, Chairperson of the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation and Procurement. It can be dropped off at the mailboxes of the Guam Legislature or emailed to office@senatorperez.org. To go through some rules of this virtual hearing, the host of this hearing will mute all participants until called upon by the chair. Virtual background should not be utilized during these hearing, and participants' face must be visible at all times. When called to speak, please remember to unmute yourself and speak into the microphone. Members of the committee wishing to speak may indicate their desire to do so through the in-app chat feature. The order of questioning will be the order of request. Line of questioning will begin with chairs, and upon completion, the floor will be open to other members. Each member will be allowed to pose questions to individual agencies if they do appear. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chair before speaking, and please remember to state your name for record-keeping purposes. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violations of this general rule of conduct will result in the removal from the public hearing by the host. To begin our agenda, it's basically one item. It's to hear testimony for Bill number 384-35 COR, authored by Senator Joe S. San Augustine. It's an act to amend Section 3123, 3218, 3300A, 3413, 3414, and 3433, and to repeal Section 3428 and 3432, all of Chapter 3, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, relative to updating and clarifying statutes concerning licensing, sales, and service of alcohol beverages. I would like to invite the sponsor of this bill to provide introductory remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for scheduling this bill, Bill 384-35 COR. And for the opportunity to speak on the measure. Bill 384-35 COR is an act relative to updating and clarifying statutes concerning the licensing, sales, and service of alcohol beverages at the request of several community partners. And I'm happy that I see them on the chat. This bill was introduced to support the thousands of food and beverage employees, many of whom have either shortened work hours, been furloughed, or laid off altogether due to the pandemic. As you know, tourism serves as one of the Guam's main economic drivers. So many of these furloughs or layoffs occurred in our island's service industry. This has caused business to think outside the box, working with public health, moving to curbside pickup or delivery. Recently, we have seen some doors open to outdoor dining. While these doors may be open, these still cause very nominal transactions for our businesses. When I met with stakeholders of various business organizations from the Guam Women's Chamber, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, they sought to update some of the regulations governing the licensing, sale, and handling of alcohol beverages, that have not been updated in decades. In this, they seek to clarify several parts of the law to ensure proper sale to customers, expand the law allowing the off-premise sale of alcohol to customers who purchase food either through pickup or delivery. They also seek to ensure that any individual, any person handling alcohol from delivery to service are required to be certified in the alcohol service training, among others. During this unprecedented time when our economy is struggling and many industries have resorted to takeout, delivery, or minimal outdoor dining in order to stay afloat, we can support these businesses by allowing the sale of prepackaged or unopened alcohol beverages along with food items. This is one option that may provide some measure of increased revenue for these establishments, ultimately supporting their employees. With this bill, we hope to consider new training technologies and sustainability advances in the services industry or changes in consumer purchasing behavior. With the increase in safe online ordering and curbside pickup and delivery service. Today, more than ever, we must carefully look at ways to support our business that will, in turn, provide opportunities for our people and their employment, building success and confidence and empowering themselves and their families. This is a small step towards revitalizing our already fragile economy. Together, we can rebuild our island and bring back the normalcy we all look to living once again. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I look forward to hearing the testimonies on the measure. And I ask my colleagues to support this measure so we can continue to find ways to make our laws clear while providing our hurting employees another way to make their families whole again. Si Zeus Masi.
Zeus Masi, Senator Augustine. Just for the record, we did reach out to government stakeholders. We reached out to the ABC Board, Department of Revenue and Taxation, the AG's office, Guam Police Department, Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center, the Mayor's Council, and the Department of Public Health. And so I see we have here today a representative from the Department of Public Health, Roxanne Rabago, and I would like to invite you now to provide your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Roxanne Rabago. I'm presenting testimony on behalf of our director, Arthur St. Augustine, who is unable to attend. Half-a-day Chairperson Sabina Perez and members of the Committee on Environment and Revenue and Taxation and Procurement. On behalf of my director, Arthur U. St. Augustine, of Public Health and Social Services, my name is Roxanne Rabago. I'm an Environmental Public Health Officer Administrator and currently the Acting Chief Environmental Public Health Officer with the Division of Environmental Health. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present testimony on Bill 384-35, an act to amend Section 3123, 3218, 3300A, 3413, Section 3414, and Section 3433, and to repeal Section 3428 and 3432, all of Chapter 3, Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, relative to updating and clarifying statutes concerning licensing, sales, and service of alcohol beverages. The Department's Division of Environmental Health regulates the importation, distribution, marketing, and retail sale of food. We also issue sanitary permits for retail food stores, restaurants, bars, and taverns pursuant to Title 10 Guam Code Annotated, Chapter 40, the Guam Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Chapter 21, the Sanitary Permit. Chapter 22, health certificates. Those are certificates that are issued to employees working within these facilities. Chapter 23, eating and drinking establishments, which bars, taverns, restaurants fall under. And Chapter 24, food establishment, which addresses and covers retail stores. Section 4102J of Title 10 Guam Code Annotated Chapter 40, which is the Guam Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, excludes any beverage subject to or complying with packaging or labeling requirements under the Federal Alcohol Administration Act from being defined as a food commodity. The Division of Environmental Health's Guam Food Code regulates the manufacturing of food commodities, including alcohol beverages, to ensure the proper food safety practices are complied with. Bill 384-35 seeks to amend Title 11 Guam Code Annotated Chapter 3 concerning the licensing, sales, and service of alcohol beverages. But this proposed legislation does not fall within the scope of the Division of Environmental Health's mandates. Thus, this department does not have a comment to Bill 388-35. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to provide this testimony.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rabago. So now I'd like to open the floor to those that are here to provide testimony from those that have signed up on the list here. So I would like to recognize Brian Artero, and if you could just restate your name for the record and your organization.
Hello, testing. Can everyone hear me? Great. My name is Brian Artero. I'm with Lone Star Steakhouse and Crust Pizzeria. Thank you for I commend you for bringing this bill for discussion today and inviting the Restaurateur Committee to provide their testimony. I'm sure that you've received letters from other colleagues in the industry, and thank you for having this Zoom meeting this morning. It has long been a goal of the industry to have our local government adapt the modern approaches to ABC laws as seen in many other communities in the US. It is a shared opinion that restaurateurs and restaurants can have the ability to sell to both dine-in and takeout patrons while displaying responsible control. We can draw no difference between a guest walking in to a restaurant and getting a pizza and a bottle of wine to go, as well as walking into a grocery store and getting a pizza and a bottle of wine to go. Crate Group operates 2 restaurants on Guam, as mentioned earlier, Lone Star Steakhouse and Crust Pizzeria. Our industry employs thousands of people, and we would welcome any change that would move the needle to help us to bring back those workers. Our industry is in the top 2 of the hardest hit in the industries in the business sector island-wide. We are in an untenable position and undergoing severe revenue decreases. In this current pandemic climate, it is ever more important to give our businesses every fighting chance to survive and make it through this economic disaster. The timing to update these regulations is upon us. This is a natural progressive move in this day and age. We support the updating and modernizing of our regulations and the passing of Bill 384-45. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Artero. At this time, I'd like to recognize Senator Mary Torres, who has joined us here today. Thank you, Ms. Senator. All right, so now the next person on the list is Jennifer Mcferrin. So the floor is open to you right now. You can just restate your name and your organization.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Jennifer Mcferrin, and I'm the marketing manager for International Dining Concepts, which is a restaurant group that includes Pica's Cafe, Bontai, Eat Street Grill, Beach and Shrimp, and California Pizza Kitchen. And today I'm going to be reading a testimonial from on behalf of our president, Darren Talai. Dear Senator Perez, the devastating impact of the coronavirus pandemic on our restaurants cannot be overstated. Of our 8 restaurant locations, only half are in operation, and the current operating restrictions combined with the complete loss of the tourist market have obliterated our sales. Already, we have had to issue layoffs and furloughs to keep our businesses from permanent closure. Now, more than ever, every additional sale and increase in our check average makes a disproportionate impact in our ability to keep our team members employed, to keep operating through this turbulence, and to weather the unknown length of this storm. To date, an overwhelming majority of restaurant owners and operators have demonstrated their ability and commitment to offering safe services for our community. We are fully prepared to ensure that this bill, should it pass, will be executed to the letter of the law to ensure guest and community safety. Over 30 states in the continental United States have already implemented similar measures, so there are numerous examples of procedures and policies to emulate. We have made tremendous changes in our business model, implementing innovative strategies and pursuing every opportunity just so that we can withstand the incredible pressures that we are facing under the current conditions. We have cooperated with the government's executive orders at every stage and asked that the government help us in turn by passing this bill. Already we have witnessed the permanent closure of some of the iconic eateries on island. Please help us avoid more. Throw us a lifeline and pass this bill. Sincerely, Darren Talai, President of International Dining Concepts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mcferrin, for your testimony. And next on the list is Marcus Fong. if he's here.
Hi, good morning, everyone, Madam Chair and Senators. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill. So my name is Marcus Fong. I'm representing the Kikos Corporation, which is the operator of Chili's Grill and Bar. And I'd like to express my support of Bill 384 as it relates to the updating of rules around the retail on-sale license. This is, in my opinion, progressive legislation that provides a long overdue update to an industry that has evolved drastically. The eating and drinking establishments have been a part of the essential infrastructure from day one, before and during this current pandemic. Ironically, though, it has also been the hardest hit. While the pandemic magnified the need for a change in the alcohol licensing rules, I believe this is a long-term change in policy that helps with the industry's evolution and changing consumer habits. Takeaway and deliveries have been a growing part of the restaurant market, and the current regulations really restrict our ability to adapt to that. 44 states have enacted similar legislation either before or during the pandemic, and many of those have adopted it as permanent changes in the regulations. There are existing laws that create adequate safeguards against unintended consequences. And because of the changes in so many states, many industry groups, such as the National Restaurant Association and other restaurant chains, have issued guidelines for best practices. So in closing, your support of this bill not only supports the struggling restaurant industry on the island, but also the thousands of workers that we employ. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fong, for your testimony. So now I'd like to invite Catherine Castro of the Guam Chamber of Commerce to present testimony.
Good morning, Senator Perez and members of the Committee on Environment, Revenue, and Taxation and Procurement and the people of Guam. My name is Catherine Castro, and on behalf of the Guam Chamber of Commerce membership, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of the passage of Bill number 384-35. This measure will immediately provide some relief to our local restaurants and food establishments through added sales achieved through purchases of alcoholic beverages with takeout food orders. This will boost their already flagging revenues associated with the current pandemic that has burdened our island economy since March. We joined the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association and the Guam Women's Chamber memberships in this quest to bring Guam's alcohol beverage control laws current and up to standard with the entire US service industry. This bill intends to take into consideration training, technological and sustainable advances in the service industry, change the licensing requirements to allow a licensee that holds one class of liquor license to hold a temporary event of a different license class, allow for a corkage fee to be applied for individuals and businesses who bring their own alcohol to an establishment with prior approval, allow for the sale of alcoholic beverages on premises at 7 instead of 8 a.m., eliminate outdated size limit requirements on containers of alcohol holding less than an ounce, eliminate the no stacking provision, and allow for establishment employees to taste alcoholic beverages for training purposes during training sessions on premise. In addition to updating the regulations, it enables establishments already compliant and in possession of a valid on-premise liquor license the ability to sell takeout alcoholic beverages which are unopened, prepackaged, or sealed with curbside takeout and delivered food orders. By enabling the sale of such beverages, establishments may keep more people employed now and in the future. In closing, the Guam Chamber of Commerce supports Bill number 384-35 and encourages the 35th Guam Legislature to support this measure as well. We appreciate the opportunity to provide our comments on this proposal. Si Diyos mo asi.
Thank you so much, Ms. Castro. I'd also like to recognize the president of Guam Hotel Restaurant Association, Mary Rhodes. So if you would like to present your testimony.
Today, I'm actually presenting a testimony written jointly together with the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce and Guam Chamber of Commerce. And I will have Ms. Jerry Lyon read half of the letter together with me. That way we represent the different organizations that have been working with Senator San Agustin on this. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman, Senator Perez, as well as all of our members of the 35th Guam Legislature, Sidzuas Maasi, for the privilege of testifying today in favor of Bill 384-35 relative to updating and clarifying statutes concerning the licensing, sales, and service of alcoholic beverages on our island. The COVID-19 pandemic has directly resulted in over 31,000 layoffs, furloughs, or reduction in employees' work hours, according to the Guam Department of Labor. Tourism is Guam's main economic driver. Therefore, most of these layoffs, furloughs, and reduced work hours have occurred mostly in the service industry. In response to the pandemic and due to the Department of Public Health and Social Services social distancing requirements, many industries on Guam have been open for curbside pickup or delivery only, including restaurants. Bill 384-35 represents the first time the Guam Hotel and Restaurant Association, Guam Women's Chamber, and the Guam Chamber of Commerce have come together in support of an initiative. And we want to thank Senator San Agustin for introducing this bill. Our purpose with regard to this legislation is to provide some measure of help to restaurants and bars in order to enable them to increase their revenues, keep their staff employed, and hopefully stay afloat during this pandemic. We have already seen several restaurants closing during this pandemic, and unfortunately, with our current rate of infection, restaurants have been limited to takeout, curbside service, and outdoor dining only. According to the industry online magazine, FSR, most restaurants aim to make about 30% of their revenue from alcohol sales. Alcohol has a very long shelf life, and a bar typically requires fewer personnel working behind it when they are required to wait tables. Therefore, cocktails, glasses of wine, and even beer served in restaurants yields larger profits inside an establishment. Plus, while guests typically order just one meal, they will order multiple drinks. Bill 384-35 allows for the sale of takeout alcoholic beverages along with food orders at a restaurant or bar that serves any type of food. We strongly believe that this measure will enable restaurants that serve alcoholic beverages to boost their revenues, hopefully enough to keep most of their staff employed during this pandemic. 44 states have adopted the sale of takeout alcoholic beverages, either temporarily or through executive order or permanently through statute. Because research shows that the sale of prepackaged or unopened alcoholic beverages, along with the food items for takeout and or delivery, can provide some measure of increased revenue for establishments and their employees. The National Restaurant Association noted in July 2020 that state-level polling indicates support for making the takeout or delivery of alcoholic beverages permanent, ranges between 70 to 85%. Fox Business reported in May 2020 that food delivery orders nationwide skyrocketed 67% in March 2020, and digital restaurant orders jumped 63%. Online ordering and takeout orders are here to stay. We need to adapt our alcoholic beverage statutes to allow our restaurants to stay in business and keep their staff employed. Many of Guam's laws and regulations governing the licensing, sale, and handling of alcoholic beverages have not been updated in decades and do not take into consideration training, technological, and sustainable advances in our service industry. It also does not consider changes in consumer purchasing behavior with the increase in online ordering, curbside pickup, and delivery service. GHRA, the Guam Women's Chamber, and Guam Chamber really worked with several senators, including yourself, Madam Chairwoman, to draft Bill 384-35. The bill updates, clarifies, and repeals certain sections in Chapter 3 of Title 11, Guam Code Annotated, allowing for the sale of takeout alcoholic beverages and updating several alcohol beverage control rules and regulations. It's important to note that with regard to Bill 384-35, all Guam DUI, age regulation, open container, and responsible alcohol server and seller act laws still apply. The mandates are preserved to ensure that takeout alcoholic beverages and those that deliver or serve them comply with the existing laws. The bill enables only establishments that currently possess a valid liquor license, on-premise license, the ability to sell those alcoholic beverages in an unopened, prepackaged, or sealed state to consumers as takeout or delivery items included with food orders. Licensees must have a prominent posting on the premise, online, or in any way possible to alert the consumer or the person transporting the beverage that states alcoholic beverages packaged by this establishment are open containers and may not be transported in a motor vehicle except in the vehicle's trunk, or if there is no trunk, the container may be kept in some area of the vehicle that is not normally occupied by the driver or passenger, which does not include a utility compartment or glove compartment. Further, such beverages may not be consumed in any area where open container laws are prohibited. The bill requires the takeout or delivery alcoholic beverages to be served in an unopened, prepackaged, or sealed state. Sealed state refers to a secure lid or a cap that does not contain a sipping hole or opening for a straw, and that could otherwise enable consumption without removing the lid or cap. The bill does not specify the type of secure lid or cap, as most establishments have or will have their own method of securing a lid or cap of an alcoholic beverage. So I'm going to have Carrie read the rest of the letter, but I would like to also add the caveat that we did meet with the ABC board chairman, and I believe that a letter of support for this bill was also sent to Senator San Augustine in support of this.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Yes, I'll be looking for that letter as well. Okay, yes, and I would like to recognize Jerry Leon Guerrero to complete the testimony.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jerry Leon Guerrero. I'm one of the board members for the Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce and a former ABC board member, and I do part-time work for Senator Sabina Perez. The bill includes establishment delivery drivers and third-party delivery drivers in the category of employees allowed to serve alcoholic beverages. Note, the buyer must provide proof of age, the driver in orders for the driver to deliver the alcoholic beverage to the buyer, and may be subject to off-premise responsible alcohol server and seller act training. The bill changes licensee requirements to allow a licensee that holds one class of license, either on-premise license or off-premises license, to host a temporary event or a different license class. An example would be a wine tasting or other event at which a restaurant or distributor is invited to participate. The bill allows a corkage fee to be applied for individuals or businesses who bring in their own alcohol with prior permission of the establishment. A lot of the hotels and restaurants are limited to the type of alcohol they serve. Therefore, a corkage fee allows establishments and consumers the flexibility to avail of this option to bring in outside alcohol to be served in an open premise establishment. Some establishments do not serve alcohol, therefore, would not allow to be charged a corkage fee. Should the establishment approve bringing in outside alcohol, the corkage fee covers providing the stemware and service for pouring. The bill allows for the sale of alcoholic beverages on premises at 7 a.m. instead of 8 a.m. due to requests by golf courses to allow golfers to purchase alcoholic beverages at the golf course before 8 a.m. tea time. Therefore, importantly, this change will not affect off-premises licenses such as grocery stores. Off-premise licensees are restricted from selling alcoholic beverages between 2 o'clock and 9 o'clock a.m. per GCA Title 11, Chapter 3, Section 3417. The bill eliminates outdated size limit restrictions on containers of alcohol holding less than an ounce. cocktails and drink recipes have evolved in the last 50 years. A lot of recipes call for less than an ounce of a type of alcohol or more than a gallon when mass quantities of a recipe are produced. The bill eliminates the no stacking provision, which does not allow more than one drink at any one time to an individual. Removing the stacking provision allows consumers to purchase a bottle of wine, bucket of beer, or bottle of service at a table with mixers. The bill allows establishment employees who are required to taste alcoholic beverages for training purposes to do so on premise during a training session. Previously, the law did not allow or on-site consumption in any amount or for any purpose by an employee. To be clear, Bill 384-35 does not encourage drinking and driving. As mentioned, all DUI and open container laws still apply, as they do when a person buys a 6-pack of beer or a bottle of alcohol at a grocery or mom and pop store. Restaurant or bar alcoholic beverages are generally more expensive than those purchased at a grocery store. The dynamic of this bill is to allow consumers to purchase alcohol beverages that might be available only through a restaurant or bar that serves food, since indoor dining is currently not available during this pandemic. In addition, we understand there has been an upward trend in home delivery service regardless of the pandemic, and businesses should be allowed to expand their services by increasing sales on items from their menu to include beverage items with alcohol, especially signature drinks. The bill requires that establishments can only sell for takeout or delivery items which are offered on the menu. Therefore, a restaurant will not be able to sell a 6-pack, 12-pack, or a case of beer. This bill will not put food services establishments in competition with retail stores for quantity purchases. We believe that the above-mentioned changes in the regulations guiding the licensing, sales, and service of alcoholic beverages on Guam are in line with today's training, technological, and sustainability advances in the restaurant bar industry. With regard to the takeout sales of alcoholic beverages being allowed on Guam, the GHRA, GWCC, and Guam Chamber are trying to keep as many people employed as possible, not only during this pandemic, but afterward as well. The changes in the way people order from restaurants and other establishments are here to stay. Allowing the takeout sale of alcoholic beverages in conjunction with a food order is a flexible way to adapt to these difficult times and keep as many people working as possible. On behalf of the thousands of businesses and employees struggling to survive during this unpredictable time in our island's history, Si Zuis Ma'asi for the opportunity to testify.
Zeus Masi, Ms. Leongaro, for your testimony. So now I would like to open the floor to the next person on the list who has come to here to testify. It is Roxanne Beneventi.
Madam Chair, I respectfully ask that I testify last.
Okay. Okay, so the next person on the list is Patrick Nelson. Is Patrick Nelson here? He was here a minute ago. He might have lost internet service. Okay, then we'll move on to the next person on the list is Gina Campos. Is she here too? I don't think so. Okay, it looks like, is Patrick Nelson back? I see his name up on the list.
Give me a second. I'll get. Yeah, there I am. You hear me now?
Yes, yeah, and please restate your name for the record, please, and the organization you're with.
I'm Patrick Nelson. Where'd it go? This thing is driving me crazy. Yeah, I'm Patrick Nelson with Clubs of Guam, and we run several nightclubs and Jardy's restaurant right now in Tumon. And a lot of the questions, some are being answered as we hear people talking, but I don't really think that, as I hear comments, I don't have a prepared statement like many other people did. But I don't think a lot of restaurants that have closed over the last couple of months closed because they couldn't sell alcohol to go. There had to be many other reasons as to why they closed. I don't think is employment going to increase with this law? I don't think so. People are just trying to get people back to work. I understand that, but I just don't see much more employment going than it is. And it was also mentioned that the price of alcohol from a restaurant would be higher price than that from the store. So if I ordered a pizza and I wanted a 6-pack of beer, why wouldn't I buy the beer from the store? Because it would be cheaper. You know, I realize there'll be a few times we might say we want it from the restaurant or to go because we're sitting there. But overall, I just don't really see that that's going to help the stores. I mean, the mom and pop stores and the other stores that retail already beer at a much lower price than a restaurant sells it for, or a nightclub. And another thing is the responsible for the ID check. I mean, what, ABC board's going to chase around every delivery guy to make sure that they're checking every ID? You know, we see down here in Tumon through my nightclubs and the restaurant that many underage do try to drink. And so let's say there's a group of 6 guys at the hotel, let's say next door down here at the Dusatani. So the one guy answering the door is over 21 that gets the beer, but the other 5 guys in the room are under 21. Who's responsible for that? The restaurant that sent the beer to there, or the guy that delivered it? You're telling these businesses to take on this liability that you're saying that we're responsible for, and you got this guy that maybe he's under 18 doing the delivery, or was the one the food to go? Are those guys going to be ABC licensed now so they can deliver liquor? Because they're delivering food now without an ABC license, probably without a health card. But now we're putting them in a position to be responsible and to answer to somebody. And I think that's a really important one there, is that enforcement thing. And so it looks like the way you're talking now is the license that is existing would be able to sell off limits should the bill pass. Will there be a new classification of a license that would be on sale and off sale? And so they're paying a different price for that license? I think a lot of people drink more going to a restaurant because of the atmosphere of the restaurant. They're sitting around with their friends, they're having a good time, and it could be a group of 2 or a group of 20. And that atmosphere is what makes people drink more, which is a lot of restaurants are saying, okay, that's 30% of my income. Okay, but if people are going to do delivery to go, I don't think they're going to order as much or drink as much. And I just really think of all the laws on Guam over the last 42 years I've been doing nightclubs and restaurants on Guam. I don't see it. There's so many laws that we need to work on that this seems to just specify one area. If we're going to revamp ABC laws, then I think there's a lot of other things that we should look at totally to revamp all the laws. I just think this was not the, you'd say helping the few, and I guess there's 44 states that are doing this now, maybe. I don't know. I don't know that. I just don't understand how there's that big a business. And the enforcement to me is the one. That's the biggest one. Because, in reality, we're down here and we deal with the customers daily. And right now, yes, business isn't that busy and everybody's kind of thinned out. But at some point in time when you get a military ship pulling here, an aircraft carrier with 6,000 sailors staying in all the hotels, all the underage, first thing they're going to do is order alcohol to be delivered to the room with a pizza or with a steak or the Vietnamese restaurant with Vietnamese soup, so they need 6 guys, they need 6 meals, and each guy can have his own liquor. Who's going to enforce that? Who's responsible when that person gets in trouble? And who's going to stop those people from opening the bottles or the 6-packs in the car. You're saying they have to put it in the trunk of their car. Well, if they're picking up the food from my restaurant, do I got to walk out to the car and make sure the guy puts it in the trunk? It's not going to happen. You know, you're looking at, yes, there's a lot of people that will follow the law, but there's a whole lot of people that will not. And already ABC board and the police and everybody have trouble enforcing. Actually, this pandemic, we've seen more enforcement on a lot of things than we've seen in years. And, you know, I mean, those of us in the nightclub business are hurting more than the restaurants are because we're still not open. You know, we're still paying our rent, still paying our bills. And we don't even get to open 25%. And so you want to help one section. I actually, the outside dining is great. As I drive through Tumon at lunch or in the afternoon, almost every restaurant I see has a lot of people sitting outside eating and drinking. So I think the drinking is then see. So I haven't talked about it much. I just really, so many different reasons why these businesses are closed. It's not going to increase employment except for maybe the drivers to go deliver food. And the new alcohol license is not something that's going to come up later on. That's going to have to be figured out as you start doing this. I mean, this is a quick fix. Okay, like if you did something like this and it's only good for the next 7 months, maybe, or a year, and then we got to go back and visit it again, or it just expires unless it gets extended because of the things are back to normal. Maybe we don't need it anymore. But it's just, you know, my thoughts on this, you know, as you guys are passing the bills and talking to everybody, and I understand that, you know, I guess if everybody, a delivery driver working for a restaurant obviously already has his ABC card or his health card. But the guys working for the delivery services don't. So now they have to go get it. And now, are they going to have to take a serve safe class for $200 and something because they deliver food? I think a serve safe class is the craziest thing in the world for bars. All my waitresses and all my bartenders know how to thaw chicken. They don't know why they need to know how to thaw chicken. They're doing it. They know how. You've got all these things going on that don't really reflect to a lot of other businesses. You know, you're thinking of restaurants and what's going on, but some of these places are going out of business because they already were in a bad situation, not because the pandemic made the situation worse. We've seen a tremendous number of other bars and restaurants closing before the pandemic. Many, many. You know, and maybe at that end where you are in the legislature and stuff, you don't see it as much as we do out here on the ground. But it's been a big change. And there's a lot of other things I think we could do to help businesses in the long run, even after this pandemic's over, that I think should happen. But I don't want to refocus on those things because I know you want to stay focused on this. But it's I just want to get some thoughts out there for people to think. Is this law really worth all the time and effort of ABC board and public health and the police pulling over a car and the guys that got beer and make sure the beer's in the trunk of the car? It's just more work for everybody, right? For what? If you think you can increase your sales by 30% because you're getting liquor delivered, I don't see it. I don't see it. Okay, I'm sorry. I'll get out of the way. Thank you for listening to me, and I'll listen to the rest of you now.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson, for your testimony. I appreciate it. Let's see. Oh, I would like to recognize the presence of Senator Therese Terlahio has joined us. She was here earlier. I just failed to mention it earlier. Okay, the next person is Ms. Campos here. She's not here. Okay, she hasn't returned. Okay, so then the next person on the list is Rennie Loki. If that person's here to present testimony. I don't think I see them. Okay, if that person isn't here, then Is Bernie Valencia, were you interested in testifying today?
Good morning, ma'am. No, I'm not. I'm just on the board of the Women's Chamber and have been working with Mary and Jerry and the rest of the group in the Guam Chamber and I'm just here in full support of the bill. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Valencia. Okay, the last person on the list is Roxanne Beneventi, being that the other two are not back with us. So the floor is yours, Ms. Beneventi. Yeah, if you can remember to unmute yourself first.
Hi, I'm awful sorry. My name is Roxanne Beneventi, and I'm also have been involved with several bars over the last 30 years. And I have several questions. First of all, I would like to back up what Mr. Nelson said, that there is no transparency here. Our tourism is at about 40% and our military is about 30%. And we're not going to have tourists back for a very long time. I think that's, we understand that. And our places in Tuman are always in jeopardy of being put off limits for serving minors. We have checks and, you know, even if I have somebody I always have somebody at the door checking IDs, making sure they're not swapping IDs. I mean, these guys, like submarines will come in and they're all underage and they'll use one ID and swap it back to the next person. And so what is ABC? I mean, first of all, the bars are not even open at all. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to help the restaurants, but the bars have been closed for 7 months. Out of the 7 months, we've only been open 3 weeks. We collectively have thousands and thousands of employees. And as far as the ABC laws that have not been updated in several decades, that's false. We lost the age limit. I think we all remember used to be 21 and our closing hour was 4 o'clock. Not to mention, all of a sudden we had to have this serve safe, which there was no available classes at GCC. So that was kind of, we did have a proctor on island, so we were able to obtain it. But if you look up serve safe is strictly for restaurants. I also have a question about these proposed gift cards. The $500 gift cards that they're doing in Hawaii. Will that include alcohol? I have so many questions about this law. It just makes no sense because there's no transparency. Anybody in a bar or a restaurant, if they're drinking alcohol, anybody from ABC board or law enforcement can walk in at any time, and the law requires that they have an ID on them. How do you enforce that with a third party? How do you enforce that? I understand that the same person could go to the store and buy and bring it to the hotel room. I understand that, but you're just making it easier for them. And this is a long-term solution for a short-term problem. We will get through COVID. And I also want to ask, if alcohol is so essential, then why can't the bars open with restrictions at a lower percentage? It's essential for restaurants, but it's not essential for bars. That doesn't seem right to me. It just I just don't. There's been no fiscal impact report from BBMR, so everybody is guessing that what your percentages are going to be, because there's been no fiscal impact report. Let me see what else I have here. And no, a lot of the ABC laws have not changed, but in decades, no, that's a reach. But a lot of them haven't changed because they work. On-premise, off-premise works. What you're seeking to do is help a few. And it's going to completely, I'm down in the trenches. I own the bar. I see what they do. And this is going to do nothing but muddle things up. And I may be overly optimistic, but Pfizer is in stage 3 of their testing. They're already producing vaccines. So I understand the restaurants need to make money, but at least they're selling something. We are selling nothing except paying our bills. We have, and we were never given, we followed some of the bars. One of Mr. Nelson's bars probably has more plexiglass in it than any of the restaurants. By far, I wish I had a picture of it. Every booth has a 6-foot plexiglass surrounding each and every booth, and he is not even given the opportunity. He has spent thousands of dollars trying to protect his patrons, and we're not giving the opportunity. You are talking about adding a few more people to the staff of the restaurants. We have every single employee is out of work. We have no option. And of course, the MPD group, things are they're jumping 67% or 63% according to the data. Well, where's that data from? It's from the restaurants. So, to me, that's the same thing as saying, well, gee, we had no positive COVID today. Well, that's because we didn't test them. So, I think that you're playing with fire with these military. I think that some of the military, and we do know that there has been kind of a, why is military let off base when they have COVID? Why are they in our hotels? We already know that there's a little bit of friction. And the military is simply, and they have threatened to before, put Tumon off limits. And that is not just the bar, that is your hotels and your restaurants, and the bars as well. And yes, I want to know because I protect my liquor license dearly. And I want to know, how are you going to get the driver? The police are not going to enforce ABC's job. You contact any police officer and they will tell you that is not our job, that is ABC's job. So to me, this bill is just, in these times, it's just unnecessary, and it increases the alcohol. It makes it too easy. It just makes it too easy, and there's no. It's a designer law built for a few, not for all. We are still closed, and we will probably be closed for a couple of months, and at least the restaurants have some income. I don't think any bar at this point is looking at making any form of a profit, but it sure would be nice to help pay the rent that our landlords are unforgiving. You may get a percentage off. At least you're selling something. We are shut down, running our air conditioners, paying our bills, waiting quietly in the corner. And we are all willing to respect and follow guidelines. I guess I've spoke too much, but I thank you for your time, Madam Chair. I don't know if there's anything I missed. I have a million papers here, so, but thank you for your time.
No, thank you for your testimony, Ms. Beneventi. And yes, I did invite ABC Board to provide testimony. I do have a couple of questions regarding enforceability. as well. So if Senator Sinoxine has that letter, I appreciate if they can forward it to my office. Is there anyone else here to testify? Okay, so are there any questions from my colleagues? Anybody interested in questions? Oh, here's Mr. Lanetta.
Hi, good morning. I've
Good
been listening to everybody. I just didn't turn on my video. I just wanted to make one correction. There was only one letter that was fired off, and that was to Senator San Augustine. The letter basically addressed two issues, requesting that some laws or policies be changed by the legislature. When the pandemic hit, several of the businesses were going to us and saying, "Hey, we need help. Can you do this? Can you do that?" And so, in light of that, I spoke with Senator San Augustine and talked to him about some of the issues that were presented to our board members. And so I fired off this letter requesting that something be done about it. It wasn't necessarily a letter of support, but the two key issues that we felt needed to be addressed at the time was the expiration of the business licenses. I mean, yeah, beyond the 30th of June to match the days that the government was forced to shut down the businesses. That's kind of like a wash now, but we requested that in the event something like that were to happen again, that maybe there should be something in the law that would help the businesses if they were forced by the government to shut down in terms of licenses and registration and things like that. I think at this time that's a wash now, but I think it should be revisited and discussed in the future because this pandemic is a big thing, but something like this can happen again as we hear from the scientists where, hey, this is once in 100 years, but in the future, things could happen again. But the main thing that we're discussing here is allowing businesses, specifically restaurants, to allow takeout. Many of the restaurants owners were coming to our board members and saying, "Hey, you know, can you at least allow us to take out?" When this hit and the businesses were coming to us, we went back to our compliance branch and we had this discussion because we were in support of allowing the businesses to do takeout, provided that there were safety measures in place that would prevent like open container and alcohol being consumed by minors and things like that. We wanted to do it, but it came back to us from the legal people with an opinion that we must go to the legislature and the legislature needs to change the laws to allow takeout. So I fired off this letter to Senator San Augustine telling him that, hey, we need to change 11 GCA Chapter 3, which would allow special conditions for the government to allow takeout. Special conditions, not something that I would consider permanent, but something where when the government forces business establishments not to continue with what they are normally doing because of crisis like this pandemic, there's supposed to be something that would allow them to at least survive. I heard someone make a statement that this might be just for a select few and not everybody. My statement to that is that we need to do something. Yes, we can't create laws that is for everybody. You know, I just, it's not as if we're favoring restaurants or not favoring bars or anything like that, but because of the situation that we're in, we can at least help some. Yes, we cannot help all, but at least a law that will allow the open container of alcohol being served to help restaurants is something versus not doing anything and not helping a segment of our community. Yeah, you know, if we have to focus on it being for everybody, then I think that just defeats the purpose. I do applaud this law, and we support it. We've had many meetings, ABC board, about this. We've seen one business who came up to us and showed us basically their ideas and their plans on having takeout, and it was very good. It was a very good presentation. It was labeled. It was sealed. You know, all the factors involved with having takeout alcohol to us was answered. And you know, in a way, the law, looking at the law, it kind of talks about that in I think what did I put down? 11 GCA Div 1, Chapter 3, Section 3227, subparagraph E, such as labeling, packaging, and safeguard methods. So it's written, but it doesn't really talk about restaurants and the pandemic and everything like that. So I heard someone saying updating the law. In a way, this kind of updates the law. It kind of brings it to the situation that we're in today to help a segment of the business. And from, I believe, the perspective of the board is that let's help what we can help. And yeah, we might not be looking at the big picture, but you know, can we look at can we change the law so that everybody, bars and anyone can do that? I don't know. I'm not a senator, but from our perspective, specifically restaurants, we've seen it physically how it would be packaged. It's part of the law. What we're doing is changing it so that the law and the packaging come together to allow a certain portion of the business industry to survive and continue to sell. And it is my belief that this will work. This law will work. And I support it 100%.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lanetta. It just was a request if you can share that letter at some point, and the board minutes too, in regards to that. I looked at the recent board minutes. I didn't see anything. So if you can share the information.
Madam Chair, I'll provide you a copy of this letter that he submitted to me. This was in July. And this is where there are other issues that were being addressed. All right.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So, yeah, in doing some of the research in other states like California, they've actually approached it using executive orders. So it was meant to be more of a temporary fix and not a long-term change in laws. And in fact, some of the language I see in the bill itself is you know, very close to what what's listed in the California regulations in regards to the type of packaging. The one part of the bill, though, that talks about, it deletes, repeals the stacking portion. And then, so I guess the question that I have is how is that going to be enforced? How are we going to, has the ABC board determined enforcement in regards to underage drinking, in regards to off-sale premises, and elimination of stacking?
Okay, so enforcement is a big deal, and we've had in the past issues with enforcement because we did not have adequate manning for our compliance branch. And I may have talked to some senators about this in the past, where they're farmed out to do other things instead of doing the tasks that they're supposed to be doing. And the compliance branch is not just ABC. The compliance branch monitors other issues for rev and tax. So they're out doing other things. Enforcement will be an issue from this perspective, because once someone takes, same with a retail store where someone goes to Payless and buys a pack of beer, buys it from the store and then takes it out. I mean, from there, how are you going to enforce that 6-pack going to minors? You can't, unless they're caught red-handed giving it to a minor, or a minor's drinking it, and then you do an audit trail of where that alcohol came from. It's the same way, I believe, with the takeout. So we might be, a dog chasing its tail in thinking how we're going to enforce takeout. If you look at it at the same situation with retail stores selling packaged alcohol, bottles, beer, things like that, it's basically the same. Once it leaves the store, how are you going to enforce it unless something happens or it's seen? From my personal perspective, I see restaurants selling takeout as the same in a way as the retail stores selling alcohol as well. And the caveat to restaurants being able to sell alcohol takeout is ensuring that the alcohol is safely contained. There are safety measures in place to ensure it's properly labeled, it's sealed, and once it leaves the restaurant, though, who knows? It's the same way as a retail store. Once a pack of beer leaves the store, who knows, right?
Okay, thank you, Ray. So yes, Ms. Rhodes, if you'd like to add anything to that.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I just wanted to add a couple of statements that really the intent of introducing these amendments, GHRA actually has been asking the ABC board for updates to these amendments on the statutes for quite some time with regards to stacking, the changes in the recipes with the type of, not less than an ounce or more than a gallon, things like that, because it has not been updated. And so we really saw this as an opportunity to modernize the law because there are so many things that really needed to be addressed. And same with takeaway alcohol. It's not a silver bullet that's going to really take care of everybody's economic situation with regards to operating and being able to create revenue for the restaurants and the bars. This is just one of many types of things we have to consider as we look at new ways of operating under a pandemic. As we all know, this may not go away for some time. And so it really, and I want to also add that the governor was in support of this at the time. She did have her team check the language out together with the ABC board, and it did go to the Attorney General's office for review. And that's where they gave the feedback that it needed to go back to the 35th Guam legislature for changes because there were rules and regulations changes. It's not something that can just happen under an executive order. So again, it's not a silver bullet to everybody to allay everybody's concerns with regards to our current situation with the pandemic or the economy. It's again just to modernize the law and to add more options. We know that there are a lot of opportunities for how people purchase alcohol to begin with, whether they're grocery stores, C-stores, gas stations. A lot of people have the options. It's just giving consumers more availability of certain things that might not be available in a store, where maybe some restaurants have exclusive access to certain brands or certain kinds of recipes or signature drinks. And, this is not for your average consumer either. You're not going to get a bunch of young people buying signature drinks or even beer, probably, from restaurants, knowing that they can go to C-stores or down the street to go and purchase that alcohol. So you're going to have discerning customers just based on price points alone. It's again, just being flexible with the options without changing too much in the laws, in allowing the Class 4 license to have the option to serve alcohol along with the food. As Brian has said previously, and he's he was correct in the fact that what's the difference between a grocery store and buying your pizza and a bottle of wine or a 6-pack, right? So as long as it's on your menu, and that's the one thing that we made sure was in this bill is as long as it's on your menu, then you should be able to offer the same food and beverage options. So again, it's just really flexibility, modernizing the law, and it's not going to be a catch-all for all consumers. More consumers are discerning on how they're spending their money these days, and it's really to, again, meet the demand, really, of the takeout, delivery, curbside services. And so all the laws are in place, whether it's sealed container, open container, DUI, and then again, the Responsible Alcohol Server Seller Act. So we're not really asking to change a lot. I think we're asking for a lot of reasonable changes to the law that we've been asking for some time now. So thank you for allowing me some additional time to clarify that and just add on to what Chairman Lynetta from the ABC board has provided.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm sorry, Mr. Lynetta, I have another question regarding, so chapter 3. So yeah, there is a limit to how much on and off sale licenses are, basically there's a cap basically for every 200 inhabitants in a municipality. So how would this affect that cap? Do you envision, and maybe perhaps would it be worth, pursuing maybe a new class of license?
No.
Since this is a permanent change to the law, should there, be, looking at more, there's some changes that are made, perhaps there might be inconsistent with other parts of the law of this particular chapter. So,
No, I don't. It will not. It will not affect the cap because the establishments that already have the ability to serve alcohol within their menu have already been approved within the limits of the law. So that should not change anything. Everything that Mary had said, I concur. And this was, I believe it was well thought out, and I believe it was reviewed very well. Some key points that that Mary said was that the big key point is if a business, a restaurant has a menu, and that menu includes alcohol, beer, wine, spirits, whatever. And they're operating within the executive order to be able to sell takeout. Why not be able to sell the full breadth of their menu, right? And that's what we're basically trying to do, is to allow them to sell the full breadth of their menu, and not add anything else. For me, it's common sense, but we have the alcohol beverage control regulation to contend with, and so the governor has the ability to put out an executive order telling restaurants, hey, you can only sell takeout, but she does not have the of food, but she does not have the ability to include alcohol with that. Based on the legal guidance, they are saying in order for these restaurants to be able to sell the full breadth of their menu, including alcohol, the legislature needs to make that change and allow that to happen. And basically for this, that's what we're asking, is to allow the restaurants, and we're not selecting a group of establishments. We're just trying to answer a situation that should be able to happen, but because of the way laws are routed, we have to go through the legislative process to allow alcohol. The governor has already said, hey, you cannot sell in-house, you have to go takeout. And so that binds these businesses because now it's only food that they can sell, but they cannot sell the full breadth of what they are normally allowed to without this executive order in the pandemic.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lanetta. Ms. Rhodes, would you like to add a point to that?
Yes, just to be clear, the language changes, the proposed language changes to the amendment with regards to on-premise license is not specific to restaurants. It's just to anyone with an on-premise license. So to say that this only applies to restaurants is not necessarily true. It's anyone that has food to go, right? So it could be a restaurant, it could be a food truck, if part of their menu and they have an ABC license for that as well. It's even hotels who may have a restaurant outlet or a deli or whatever if they serve alcohol. So we did not specifically put restaurants, it's for on-premise establishments. So anyone with an on-premise license should be able to have takeout as long as it's with food. Earlier in this process, we did meet with DEH. I know Ms. Rabagu is still on the line. We met with DEH with Malou and Kat, as well as Tom at the time. And we did ask a question with regards to bars. And so one of the requirements during the pandemic, especially with the health and safety protocols, is you cannot serve food to be shared amongst when you're open, when you're allowed to be open, you can't share food. So for example, bar nuts, pretzels, chips, whatever it is, you cannot have shared food. So if we did ask specifically, and I know Renee Logie was on the line earlier or on the Zoom chat. She's my food and beverage chairperson. We did ask specifically to DEH if bars had to replace what they serve inside along with their alcohol with pre-packaged foods, would that be allowable without them having to go through that licensing for food? And they said yes, as long as it's pre-packaged, as long as they're not manufacturing, as long as they're not cooking. So if Patrick or Roxanne or any other bar, once they open, then they can serve pre-packaged foods. So that would be like bagged pretzels, bagged nuts, bagged chips that you can add to your bar menu so that you are selling other things other than just drinks. And so if you did that and you were allowed to do takeout or delivery, you could do that essentially. But it's not specific. I just want to clarify that when we wanted to keep this change simple, especially in this portion of the law, when it said the on-premise license, it's for any establishment with an on-premise license.
All right, thank you. So another point, I know in one of the earlier letters that there was a mention of limiting the number of alcoholic beverages per meal ordered. And then in the bill itself, or the proposed bill, they have just removal of stacking altogether. And I think perhaps maybe there was some deliberation in regards to, mitigating potential effects. Is this something that I think perhaps is there some, rules that need to be placed? Should, the ABC board, in regards to the ABC board, should there be some sort of rules to kind of address any specific needs that may come up from this specific type of engagement? Maybe this question is for Mr. Lanetta. If you can unmute yourself, please. You're still.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, do you foresee any specific rules that need to be adopted for this now on and off sale combination? Anything that needs to be adopted as far as the implementation?
No, I right now, at the top of my head, there isn't any that I can think of.
Okay. All right. So I think those, actually one more question from Ms. Rhodes. As far as I know, in a previous letter, there was a limit to 3 beverages per meal. Is this something that you would agree to or accept if there was a limit per meal ordered?
We did not put any limitations on that. And also because there are different sizes, right, of drinks and things like that. So for example, one of the things was with regards to not less than an ounce and no more than a gallon. What wouldn't stop, so Brian, I'm just going to use an example, right? So Brian has a lot of signature drinks at Crust. Why wouldn't he add like sangria? If I don't even want to put the time into making something like that, he could sell, you know, a gallon of sangria if I wanted to put together a party that he's catering. So we didn't put limitations because I think that should be allowed to the business establishment, knowing on how, you know, the customers that they have and what specifically they're really catering to with individual consumers. And again, realistically, people aren't going to be buying large quantities of those types of alcohol with food orders. Not unless they are catering an event and they specifically want that. That's just a very expensive option of purchasing and consuming your alcohol if that's the way you are planning to consume it. Not, you know, again, there are reasons why a lot of people go to a Crust or go to a Lone Star or go to a Chili's or even, you know, CPK and Beach and Shrimp. There's a lot of reasons why they go there for the specific kinds of foods and the specific kind of drinks, and a lot of times the service and the staff. And so they want to support those that they often go see. So those specialty or signature kinds of drinks is really what we're trying to go after, is really upscaling the market and upselling the product and giving everybody that opportunity to deliver that service and product. But to not put limitations, because why you wouldn't limit at a store, you know, how much, unless it's like the Navy Exchange. I know that they limit certain products just because of sheer volume, but I don't see stores limiting alcohol to that point. I think we all have to understand that, you know, there's responsibility. There's already the Responsible Alcohol Server and Seller Act. In RASA, it's already built in, whether you're on premise or off premise, you have to sell responsibly. You can't sell to somebody who's already clearly intoxicated. You can't sell, you know, things that really, and of course the consumer has to be in front of you. So I understand what Patrick said earlier with concerns about, you know, fake IDs and people buying for another person. But you have that anyway in those kinds of environments. Those individuals who are seeking to purchase illegally, they have other routes. If they're using other people's IDs, they're probably going to a gas station. If they can't afford to get an ID on their own, or if they're illegal to do it, they're finding other means to do it. And this is not the route they'll go. This is an expensive route. We're just trying to give everybody the fair chance and opportunity to create some revenue for themselves. And I don't think that you're going to have a lot of fraud and abuse on that, because it's just, again, an expensive option. So we did not put any language on limiting the amount of alcohol, because we actually wanted to repeal that portion of the law to limit the quantities that goes into recipes.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Oh, yes, Mr. Lanetta, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to make I guess a correction about Mary saying that I said restaurants. For lack of a better term, like a food truck or anything like that, I guess I use restaurants. Basically, I mean, any establishment that sells food, I think of it as a restaurant. So I was being general from that sense. I just wanted to also add that, we may be overthinking this. I think the key is the demographics, where certain types of people will go to a food establishment to get their food and maybe purchase alcohol, and there are certain demographics of people that will go to a retail store and purchase alcohol there. And if you look at restaurants versus a retail store, you can get volume because it's least expensive. You go to a restaurant and the prices are much higher, So, and then you have to look at the population of who will go to a restaurant and buy alcohol versus who will go to a retail store. So it's kind of, for me, apples and oranges. And we may be overthinking that because now we allow people to get takeout from restaurants of alcohol, that it's going to open up a whole new can of worms. But you kind of have to look at the demographics and who's going to go to a restaurant and purchase alcohol off of the menu, which is much more expensive. And yes, Mary is correct, specialized. Certain types of wine you can't get at a retail store. They normally try to sell what the populace is wanting, not specifically French, Italian, Argentinian, whatever. So we have to put that into consideration. The bottom line from the ABC board's perspective is it's an answer to a food establishments are coming at us and saying, hey, how come the executive order doesn't allow us to sell alcohol when they're forcing us to only sell food, And to me, that's not right, especially when they have it in their menu. And many of these businesses plan their business based on being able to sell not just food, but also other things like alcohol, right? They become a business because, hey, we can sell alcohol and food and we're going to make this much money per year. But if it's just food, then we're basically crippling them on purpose and we're not helping them. And so please don't overthink. Think about the demographics of who's going to purchase alcohol and the people that will abuse it. It's easier to buy at a retail store, get a 6-pack or whatever. You don't have to buy food or anything else. You can buy directly just alcohol. So which is easier? That's my perspective. Thank you for listening to me.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lanetta. Ms. Bernie Valencia, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you, Senator. I wanted to respond or help answer one of the questions you asked that probably has not been answered yet on stacking. A lot of the discussion has been about takeout, but I think the change we offered with stacking really helps everybody who does sell alcohol. One of the things that everyone recognizes on this call right now is that buckets of beer are already sold, and technically it's illegal. So bars and restaurants figure out ways how to do it. They might sell it and hold the whole bucket behind the bar. Everybody knows it could be 6 for $10 or whatever that number is, but all it does, all we're trying to do is allow legally some of what the bars and restaurants are doing already, which is selling buckets of beer or having a bottle of wine at their table side, whether it's your special anniversary. So this isn't really about takeout. It's really about when restaurants and bars are allowed to reopen and have in dining or in restaurant service. That's what that's about. Hopefully that addresses your question on that specific matter. And then just lastly, as Ray had said, this won't help everybody. So I'm glad to hear a lot of people in support of this, and those that are not in support of it. While it doesn't help everybody today, why not help some? And the groups will continue to figure out how we help everybody during these difficult times. If it can bring somebody an extra $300 or $500 of revenue a day, then that's a lot of money for a small restaurant or bar that's looking to survive. Thank you, Senator.
All right, thank you, Ms. Valencia. Senator Sanoxine, if you can post that letter on the in-chat group, if that's available to you, readily available, I appreciate that. Okay, so I would like to open the floor to my colleagues for questions. Senator Therese Terlahi, do you have any questions?
Yes, so just to follow up on that, Ms. Rhodes had said earlier that if the bars serve food, packaged, prepackaged food with drinks, that almost nothing would prevent them from also doing curbside service or delivery services, except for right now, public health has not allowed them to open. So Rosanna, is that correct? Is it public health that has restricted the bars from opening for curbside or delivery services?
So my understanding it's the DPHSS guidance memos are derived from the governor's executive orders. So at this time, bars and taverns are not allowed to operate. They're considered a prohibited activity.
Okay. And do you see any difference between a bar doing a delivery service or a restaurant doing a delivery alcohol service?
Well, the interesting thing, as we provided in our testimony, is alcohol beverages are not classified as food because of the alcoholic content in these products. So because of that, we don't classify it as a food product. It does not fall under our guidance documents. However, the practices of making a drink would fall under the Guam Food Code. And that's how it would apply, the safe sanitary practices of manufacturing products.
And those all apply already, right? Regardless of whether it's for takeout or for in-service, this safety courses that people working in these establishments, those are all in place already. This
That's correct.
Right? Except
That's
the question that was raised by Mr. Nelson, whether the deliverers would also have to take this class, right? So that's still one question. All right, so Mr. Lanetta, for the ABC board, is there any difference between a bar offering curbside or delivery service with these types of conditions versus a restaurant for your board's purposes? I can't hear you, sir. Can you turn on the?
Sorry. Yet the current laws don't address the issue with bars, curbside, or that's a new thing that popped up with this pandemic. This curbside delivery, I think, is a new term for us for the last few months. So that doesn't address it. But in terms of licenses, yeah, a bar versus a restaurant, there are differences, yes.
So the on-premise license doesn't encompass all of them?
No.
Excuse me?
Okay, maybe if you could explain that. This is, okay, yeah, please.
So I'm going to the law here. There are different licenses. There's a club license. There's a wholesale license, retail license for just beer, general wine. There microbrewery. So there are different kinds of licenses. So an alcohol license is not just an all-encapsulating authorization to sell alcohol. You have to fit within that category of license classes and fees. Fees are different, classes are different, and then you go and then we look at the demographics of the population. What are the limits of the number of establishment that can sell alcohol within that village, based on demographics, how many is in that village versus how many can be allowed, and we do monitor that. The issue is food, actually, in terms of if they sell food, if they're a restaurant, they don't fit into that whole of the demographics of a population into a village. They can get their license, but if it's a bar, then they have to fit into that population of a certain village. So as we all know, Tumon is basically maxed out with the number of new bars that can open up, because they just maxed out on that demographics of being allowed to be able to sell alcohol as a bar. versus Mariso, as an example,
Okay, so I understand, all the benefits of this bill, and it seems practical, but Mr. Lanetta, for the ABC Licensing Board, can you explain to me, why would you not want them to get an off-premise license instead?
Who is they? Who are you saying? Are you talking about bars to get an off-premise license?
The restaurants right now, the ones we're trying to allow to sell right now for off-premise. They have on-premise licenses, and we're trying to make an exception to the on-premise where it allows them to serve off-premise, right? And
Yes.
And instead of getting an off-premise license. So I just want to know the board's rationale as to not requiring an off-premise license. I think I know the restaurant's rationale, and that is to save costs. But what is the board's rationale? If you license one person for off-premise and you make them, jump through certain hoops,
Yeah.
and then, what is the difference for
Okay,
your
so
for your board?
cost is an issue, but I do not believe that restaurants want to be able to sell alcohol takeout because of cost. They want to sell alcohol because that's part of their plan. That's their business strategy, is to sell food and alcohol.
I'm asking
And
your
so-
rationale, your board's rationale as to why not require an off-premise license then?
Well, it's apples and oranges, but we have one business who has come before the board requesting an off-site license to be able to, as a restaurant, sell alcohol off-site, and we approved it. And I think it's just one business that has done it so far. But they came to us and they showed us their packaging, the labeling, and gave us the procedure, their SOP of how they're going to go about doing it, and it made sense. But maybe other restaurants or food establishments will do the same thing. But I think there's a difference of cost in licenses, and there are different requirements maybe on how they go about getting the approvals. But yeah, restaurants can request offsite, and I believe there's only one so far that has requested one and has been approved. But why? If you're a restaurant, why would you want an offsite license in addition to, being able to sell in your restaurant? Why not wait for the law to change that will allow you to sell the full breadth of your menu because of something that was placed upon your business after you open up your business to sell alcohol? We're just modifying the ability for them to continue to sell what they originally planned to sell in the beginning when they open up their business. With rules and regulations that they must follow.
Right. I guess, yeah, that's my question, is if you want to put rules and regulations in place for off-premise license holders, why would you not want to put those rules and regulations in place for on-premise license holders who are selling off-premise?
It's the same. The requirements are the same. The licensing is different.
Okay.
The requirements. If someone wants to sell off premise, the requirements of packaging, labeling, and everything else is the same. It's just the licensing is different. But what we're saying is, why ask food establishments to get a new license to do that? And I fired off this letter as a temporary measure of the executive order that forces businesses to go takeout, right? If it were me, if it were Ray Lanetta that makes the laws, I would say, okay, you can also sell alcohol, provided you have the safety measures. But the governor can't do that. I can't do that. The legislature can by changing the law.
Okay, I just want to clarify, because like I said, for your board's enforcement, your role, you are our regulatory board, you are the enforcers, you are who we are relying on to regulate off-premise consumption of alcohol, sales, And now this. So I just want to know, you're saying that the regulations are exactly the same in this bill and your current off-premise licenses, and that your enforcement efforts would not be impacted by this? I mean, that's the.
So enforcement is for me, I'm sorry, enforcement is a can of worms for me because, you know, we're always undermanned, we're always underfunded, we're always understaffed. But I do not believe that this will open up a new can of worms out there should food establishments be allowed to sell alcohol that's in their menu. I don't believe that will affect the enforcement issues that we have today. No.
All right. Do you believe that it would be a problem to expand this to bars to allow them to also sell curbside or delivery?
That's a whole new can of worms, and I today I don't want to go there right now because I think that will muddy what we're trying to do today. You know, I don't. We're not talking about bars. We're talking about establishments that are mandated by executive order to serve takeout. Period. If we start going there, we're going to go in a different tangent, and it's just going to muddy what we're trying to do today, in my personal opinion.
All right, Ms. Rhodes, I know I've asked you this before, so maybe you could just explain here for the record, why do you want this exception to the law as opposed to just applying for an additional off-premise license?
And because of the current situation we're in with the pandemic, we wanted to introduce something that would benefit the businesses and the consumers without a lot of major changes to the law. So by adjusting what the on-premise license already includes, just extending it out to include takeout with the safety protocols included or added in would just be the most reasonable and logical way to do so. I want to add that the on-premise as well as the off-premise licenses did increase to $1,000 per license. And that's without making any changes to the laws. And so when those increases took place, we were wondering, what happens with the increase in fees. And so we felt that, the group felt that if we just asked for this because one of the main reasons why was the increase in takeout orders, not just in this pandemic, but even in general with the different companies that have added services between Stroll and Good to Go and not just on Guam, but all over the world, you're starting to see increases in food orders and takeout and delivery. And so we just felt that this was a perfect time with the pandemic is to recognize this new type of consumer behavior and purchasing behavior and to update the laws. And that's really what this is about, is updating and amending our current laws on the books without complicating it because the fees were already increased without making any changes to the amendments. So the fees, again, are now $1,000 each. And so we felt that with increases in fees, you usually see improvements. And so we'd like to see these improvements added along with these fee increases.
All right,
that have already taken place.
And so, Mr. Lynette, I would just like the board to consider the fees that you are giving up by this bill here, that if you need it for your enforcement efforts. And if I could just ask one more question, Madam Chair, is so the stacking law, we are repealing this, by this bill, repealing the stacking law completely. This is a prohibition on stacking drinks, more than one drink in front of per customer at a time. And I can't find any intent on the original law. It was put in place in 1954, it looks like. But I'm guessing that the intent was to, prevent, where the servers are supposed to be looking at how drunk a person is, or, whether they just get kind of also monitoring that. And this kind of removes that type of control. But I understand the intent. It's for wine, large wine bottles or other containers, buckets of beer. But how do you think there will be any negative implications from allowing, for example, at happy hour, a table full of drinks to be drank by one person all night long? I mean, you know, that's I think the only community concern here is, are we just promoting drunk drivers? I don't know, Ms. Rhodes, if you could speak to that.
No, again, all of the laws are in effect with regards to drunk driving, open containers laws and all of that. You know, we're in a situation where businesses have lost 90% of sales with restaurants, hotels, and these other establishments. Bars are 100% closed, right? So we are looking for opportunities, for ways for us to allow businesses to continue to operate and employ people and to save jobs, really, and to get some part of the economy going.
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that question, because this is not a pandemic related question. This stacking law that's going to be repealed is a permanent repeal. It's going to take place for house drinking in bars or restaurants in the future. So I want to talk to that. Yeah.
Well, no, the Responsible Alcohol Server Seller Act still holds the individuals. What's really interesting about that law specifically is that it holds the establishment, the server, the owner, all responsible to serve or sell that alcohol. So that law is still in effect. So even though you take stacking off the books, it allows the flexibility for people to purchase the bucket of beer or the wine and have full service, or even, let's say, even bottle service, right? That's very popular in the States. You would allow your establishments to serve the full bottle of wine, champagne, and all of that to improve the customer experience once indoor dining is allowed or bars are allowed to open. So it just adds to the experience because they are doing it. Actually, as Ms. Bernie Valencia mentioned, whether it's the bucket of beers or the bottle of wine on the table, it's allowing that flexibility to serve the product in the way it was intended with that promotion. But you still have Responsible Alcohol Server Seller Act there that protects the consumers in the fact that the server or the seller, the owner, the entire establishment is still responsible for how they serve or sell that alcohol. So they still have to act with responsibility.
All right, thank you. And so Mr. Lanetta and also from Public Health, Rosanna, Ms. Robigo, if you could, do you have anything to add to that? Do you think this is going to make harder your enforcement of these safe server requirements or your enforcement efforts or not?
So I reviewed the law. I reviewed the changes of the law, and when I saw stacking, I cringed. When I saw stacking being removed from the law, I cringe. I'm not comfortable with that. And as a board, we did not discuss stacking. That was added after. You know, like I said in my letter, there were two issues that we basically focused in, and that was the extending the registration or the expiration of the registration/license for businesses because of the pandemic, and the other one was the temporary use of takeout due to the pandemic. The board's focus was pandemic, you know, and that we wanted to help the businesses and we could not because it had to go through the legislature. So the board only discussed those two issues. We did not discuss any other changes in the time, the stacking. So, you know, we said our piece, and other entities had input into this changes of the law. But you know, I'm getting texts from my board members basically saying, yeah, we did not discuss stacking, and yet no, we did not discuss stacking. What we discussed were the two issues. So stacking for me is like, whoa. It's kind of like we're going into a you know, an area that we're not as a board comfortable with. Two is that board members want me to ensure that, you know, I have to only tell the legislatures what we discussed. And so if we agreed on that, we agreed on it as a board. So there's some things that I may have said that is my personal opinion, but with those two issues, we're at 100%.
Okay, I understand. And I understand that, yeah, for takeout with a bottle of wine versus a cup of wine is a whole different story. And that's the goal here of this bill, I think. But okay, so Ms. Robigo, did you want to add anything? I have to yield my time back.
Sure, no problem. Thank you, Senator Talaki. Again, with respect to our division, you know, we don't regulate the sale of alcohol beverages. However, we do regulate the facility that sells alcoholic beverages, whether a retail store, a bar, a tavern, or even a restaurant. I think the department would have to defer to the public safety officials to see whether they would have any issues or concerns relating to the increased sale of alcoholic beverages to consumers. That's not really something that's within our lane. I would hate to, you know, comment on that. Of course, being the Department of Public Health, we do have public health safety in mind. And of course, we would, you know, caution people to drink and consume alcoholic beverages. And that's, you know, being the responsible public health role that we serve.
Thank
I don't know if that answered your question, Senator. I'm sorry.
Fine, thank you. Thank you, Rosanna. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Talahi. Senator Kelly Marsh-Tactino, if you have any questions.
Sedus Masi, Madam Chair, and I really appreciate the people who came and visited me in my office because I did have a lot of questions and they were able to answer a lot of them. And between then and now, I've done a little bit of research and I want to do some more because, you know, what they say makes a lot of sense. We want to provide assistance. We want to modernize our laws. But we want to also, because we're here for the larger community, we just want to make sure that the best practice models are looked at and things like this. So it's as responsible as possible. And I know at the end of the day, the owners of these establishments, they too want this to be responsible. And I'm so glad that we had some people here representing bars because I do think that we need to move in that direction as well. Bars serve food. You know, many in our community may go to a bar and eat enough there that they've kind of had a meal, either an official meal or appetizers that were filling enough. And so, you know, we want to try to provide as much parity as possible, that we're opening up and perhaps creating some consideration for the restaurants, but that we can be working towards the bars as well. And I really appreciate the discussion and the questions and so forth thus far, because they covered a lot of what I was really interested in for the regulatory aspects, whether DRT or the ABC board within it, whether they felt they had enough personnel for an enforcement. We don't want to create a situation where we can't regulate it. And so I appreciate that those kind of things have been answered. And so some of what I think we need to continue to look at, how much guidance do we have here for responsibility, and then how much for that flexibility that we do want to provide to our businesses. So some of the states, just as a consideration, do have limits to alcohol per drink at 2 ounces or so. So that might be something that's considered. Some of them do have limits of drinks per meal, since we're talking about kind of taking the restaurant experience home. A typical customer perhaps wouldn't have more than 2 or 3 drinks per meal, because there is that responsibility of not over serving. So that might be considered. You know, I want to continue looking at the definition for the prepackaged especially just to make sure that that's clear, because, you know, we just want to make sure it matches our intentions of providing that safety of the drink getting between where it was purchased and to where it's being delivered. I've done some searches about the negative impacts of this, and I really haven't found too much. I will continue to research it so that we're being responsible, but it did have some points about perhaps there being a bit more risk of temptation and those sort of things. And I also appreciated in the fiscal note that it said that some of the balances are that there is likely going to be, if there are increased sales, it's going to be an increase in the taxes that the government collects. So if I understood correctly, if I could just ask Mr. Lanetta, how many licenses did you say for off-premises have been issued at this point? Did you say it's only one? And if you could please unmute yourself.
Sorry. Right now, as far as I know, post-pandemic, there's only one that we approved that is doing the, being able to sell alcohol. I don't wanna speak out of turn because sometimes my memory is not so good, but I think only one. Yes. I'm gonna check with my board members while we continue, and maybe they can help me.
Okay, yes, if you could provide that, and that just gives us information. I mean, information is key. And so I did think that was a good point, like I said, for the fiscal note where it said the increase in taxes, for some reason they didn't tackle the lack of licenses that would be issued. And I don't know why they didn't do that. I think that should have occurred to them, but we can allay some of that there. So I'm trying to see if there's an actual question yet, because we've covered a lot of things. Just look at this last. Yeah, I guess the difference with the delivery is one of the areas I'm still not entirely clear about if there would have to be changes there. But I think for entities that have developed this as a business, maybe they would have certain drivers that would handle orders with drinks, and maybe certain drivers that don't. And I guess I'll just also mention in my research, I did find that there are also limits to the size of alcohol. That a typical bottle of wine or a pitcher even can be quantified. So there may be some limit to put, some ability to put limits there. And there's one question that keeps on flitting in and out of my mind. I guess it's the meal. I just think that the term food, it can perhaps be better defined, because if the intention is to have food, there's a whole lot of flexibility there. It could be a $6 appetizer. Well, then that means it really should apply more so to bars versus a meal. And perhaps meal is the way to go, because that seems to be the intention of other legislation that it's kind of replicate, like I said, that restaurant experience at home. Maybe not all elements of the restaurant experience, but the main part, which is to sit down and have a meal and maybe one or two or three drinks. So I just wanted to make those points so that if the committee report needs to have them made so that it can refine the bill further to better meet the intentions and create that balance. The last question that I had, and I guess I would ask Mr. Lanetta again, what is the reasoning behind the not having the alcohol being sold between 2 a.m. and 9 a.m.? Because here we're asking for a difference of 7 a.m. And so, you know, I'm not saying it's not worth considering, but it'd be important to hear what the justification is. Mr. Lanetta, could you explain the justification, like why 9 a.m. is chosen? Oh, and if you could unmute yourself as well.
We can't hear you.
Yeah, Mr. Lanetta, if you could unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm sorry. That was before my time. I don't know. I don't know the politics and the issues that went about putting that time frame. I do know that before I became an ABC board member, I had a friend who owned a bar, and that was a big issue for them, the hours, and that they wanted more, like 2 a.m. to much earlier than that, I think 2 to 5 or something, and then people can start selling alcohol after 5. I don't know, but between 7 and 9, I would stick with 9 personally. That's my personal opinion. Going back to your question, yes, we only had one food establishment that requested, and they closed their on-sale license and they opened up their off-sale license. They requested an off-sale license. We approved it. Unfortunately, this restaurant is no longer doing business. I got that feedback from my board members. So only one actually, but I guess it was too tough and they could not continue as a restaurant. So they closed down their operation, unfortunately.
Okay, so Duas Masi for that. And for Ms. Rhodes? Oh, and if you could,
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Senator March Titano. We actually brought this up in our meeting with ABC Board Chairman, Mr. Ray Lanetta. The reason why, you know, I know that there have been requests in the past to consider future legislation, to consider maybe bars and to have a special license to operate after 2 a.m. But we didn't want to bring that up in this one because it was really just to make some really simple, more logical amendments, updates to the statutes to get it modernized. That was really the focus of this bill, is to modernize this. But they were willing to consider two other things, which was the hours of operation and the additional licensing within TUMON, for example, with the bar licenses, right? So they were willing to consider that at some point, but not for this one because it was really specific to the modernization. Now, the reason why we brought up the 7 a.m. instead of 9 a.m. is primarily because of our tourists who come to the island. When breakfast is being served between 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., a lot of our Japanese and Korean and Taiwanese tourists drink beer or other alcohol with breakfast. And earlier, the example was golf in our letter, but the two main reasons were our tourists primarily drink during breakfast, or want the option at least to drink during breakfast. And so that was really, at least at 7 a.m., to 9 a.m. And because a lot of the C stores and other stores, they don't sell alcohol till 9. So it's very difficult for people to get that on the way to golf. And so it was really to have the option really for our tourists when we reopen, that we would have the flexibility to serve alcohol during that period. But of course, we don't do anything right on our island just for tourists. And so you'd have to amend the law to consider everybody. But that was the primary reason, is we get a lot of requests to serve alcohol, and they get very disappointed when we can't serve them alcohol during that period and they have to wait till 9 a.m.
So just Masi for both of those perspectives. And when I was visited in my office, we did have some discussion there. And and I was really trying to put on those different hats of, those Sunday brunches that locals might go to that have mimosas and things like this, just to try to see these different circumstances that might apply. And so I think those will be good for us to consider. And, I did live somewhere where it was allowed to have alcoholic beverages be part of takeaway. And I see the reasoning in that, and I think that Ms. Rhodes made a very good case for it, and others as well earlier, because there are certain places that have just these certain recipes for drinks and so forth. So, if it's a Long Island iced tea, those can be more difficult to make at home, or a margarita or something on the rocks, I guess. But it can be more complicated for people at home, and getting it out of a can or a bottle from somewhere else prepackaged may not be the same as a signature drink, or even just a bartender who knows how to do it just right. So I had wanted to mention that I have lived somewhere where that happened, and I could see the reason for it. And I do think it was a really good point that cost is going to be a big factor. Purchasing a drink for $12 is certainly different than $2.99 somewhere else. And so I do think that it's going to help keep the balance that people, and the responsibility that people are seeking. But Sujus Maasi, Madam Chair, for letting me provide some input on the research that I've done or experiences I've had, and ask a couple of questions.
All right, thank you, Senator Marsh-Taitano. Senator Tello Taitigui.
Madam Chair, I think Roxanne was putting her hand up much earlier on and wanted to say something, maybe wanted to make a comment. So I'll yield to Roxanne for right now. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Beneventi.
Thank you, Senator Tello. This is to Mr. Lanetta, the ABC board, and Ms. Rhodes. I think you're both underestimating the demographics, that you're saying that the restaurants, it's too expensive for the people that want to go to the store. And that's simply not the case. When these military ships come in and they've been out to sea for months and months and months, and they are underage, they will pay anything to get that alcohol. And with third-party delivery, I mean, I just don't understand. The ABC board is sorely understaffed. So this is just putting more on your plate, and you're talking about the demographics of who's going to be doing this restaurant to go. I'm not trying to hurt the restaurants. Please don't misunderstand. I just think that you're making it easier, much easier, and we're going to end up with a lot of drunk underage sailors strolling up and down Tumon because they've been drinking in their hotel rooms that are not monitored safely and regulated. I mean, we do our jobs. We check the age. We don't let them over drink. And that's just not possible. And as far as the demographics go, they will pay a lot of money. So that theory is out the window. And then they're going to end up strolling up and down Tumon drunk. And then when they get in trouble on the ship, the whole ship gets put back they get recalled into lockdown. When one person screws up the whole ship. So that means, Miss Rhodes, that your hotels, your hotel rooms, and we're not going to have tourists for a long time. This is going to affect them when the captain of the ship recalls these people because an underage got drunk and was strolling up and down Tumon, maybe did something stupid. And there is no control with this third-party delivery. And I understand what you're saying about the stores, but you're just making it much, much easier for them. And they will pay the money. They will pay double the money because they've been out to sea and have 6 paychecks in their bank account. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm certainly not trying to hurt the restaurants. We're all hurting, but I've been in Tumon for so long. I see just potential disaster with a lot of this. And I just wanted to make that point. And no, I'm not trying to hurt them. And it's not ABC's fault. They are understaffed. But this is all I got to say is wow. Anyway, thank you. Thank you, Senator Titagui. I just wanted to point that out.
Senator Titagui.
Yeah. Thank you. You're very welcome. And thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. You know, I really appreciate all what we can do, everyone can do as a community to rebound, you know, for the businesses to rebound. And I think it's an opportunity here to also include the bars into this legislation. So my question to Renee here is, you mentioned not to muddy the water earlier with regards to including the bars, but if they have curbside, the same thing as restaurants, I mean, would you support that? And this is to ABC.
This is Mr. Lanetta. I think that question was addressed to you.
Mr. Lanetta or Renee. I'm sorry, I always call him Renee. He's like, ever since.
Wow. That's a good question. I can't, as ABC chairman, I can't really talk to that until I've had an opportunity to discuss that with my board members and see where we're at. But again, I think that opens up a new can of worms and is taking away from actually what we're trying to do. So I can't answer that point blank.
I appreciate it. How many bars are?
Yeah.
Renee, how many bars are there on Guam? How many bar businesses are on Guam?
We know that answer based on the licenses that have applied under bars, and I can give you that, but offhand, I don't have that information. I could give
it's approximately over 150, if I'm not mistaken, and that was taken a while ago. But I think it's a little bit more than 150, and that's 150 businesses as well. If you're going to incorporate restaurants, I think, you know, she should look into that as well. And I know you're trying to help, Renee. I mean, really, what you're doing and trying to look at other legislation in other states. I too have looked at, did my research, and finding out some of this legislation has a moratorium on it. You know, Colorado has a moratorium for 2021, I think it was, in I don't know the exact date, but you know, there's a moratorium on that. And you know, the off-premise license that was brought up, I thought that was a good perspective. If you know, because you never know how long these bills, and this is a very contentious bill. This is very concerning. I'm surprised Matt is not here, which I'm pretty sure they'll probably send a testimony to the chairman to discuss this. But I think something like this should definitely have a roundtable discussion to make sure that we do it right, because the ills that can happen through alcoholism is huge. You know, we're trying to help the businesses, and that's what we're going to do, but we have to do it responsibly. And I appreciate the fact that you did mention it's hard for you to, you know, have the manpower to oversee this, especially when you have a delivery person delivering it. You can't monitor them, you know, whether they're drinking way too much to cut them off, you know, like some restaurants or some bars do, you know, when they've had too much. It makes it difficult for your job. So I greatly appreciate you mentioning that. And what we need to do is help provide some funding for your agency. You also mentioned that you were talking about your board members. You had an opportunity to discuss this legislation with your board members, and then you put out I still haven't seen the copy of it, and I see that you went online real quickly and heard from one of your board members to do some corrections. So I think you can support the intent of it, but if I'm not mistaken, without saying it, the intent, yes, you're raising, okay, but it does need some help. Like for instance, when it was talked about, nothing in the bill says menu. You know, you were talking about menu, what's on the menu, but nothing in the bill has the word menu on it. So we need to look at that, you know, make any kind of amendment to ensure that menu is on there because it's not there. Okay, there's so many locations. College and Yellow bars. A lot of my questions were asked earlier and answered, which I greatly appreciate. Mary, thank you so much for doing your research on this. I too had the opportunity. They met with myself, the Women's Chamber, as well as Hotel Restaurant Association to discuss this legislation, and it's an opportunity for a win-win here. So I'm looking forward to making those adjustments to, you know, address any concerns I have or the community has as well. Patrick brought some good concerns up, as so is Mrs. Beneventi as well. And then other than that, Madam Chair, may I also request that we get testimony from Guam Behavioral Wellness Center regarding the potential, you know, unusual alcohol consumption levels. Considering, you know, what COVID has brought, much depression, suicidal, and anxiety to our community from COVID and the effects alcohol would have. Looking forward also to a testimony from Department of the Guam Police Department as well on this, as well as Guam Highway Department. So, Madam Chair, making these requests and suggestions. Oh, go ahead, Renee. And don't forget to unmute. Unmute, Renee, unmute.
Okay, there.
Okay, there, you're on.
Thank you. So you asked me the question about how many businesses have alcohol license out there. I don't know that number right now, but licenses expire on the 30th of June. So I believe July is when I asked the question. So how many businesses do we have? I don't believe that was given to me as an answer, but what was surprising to me was that there's a significant number of businesses that did not reapply for their alcoholic licenses. I mean, I was like surprised, significant number. But I will get you the number that we currently have. But what's important for the legislature to know right now is that many have not reapplied for the ability to sell alcohol. So that's a surprise. You also talked about modernization. Yes, I think it's important for us to modernize our regulation. And we are looking at Hawaii, Los Angeles, and another location, I think Las Vegas, in terms of how they're doing their regulation. And we're trying to update. The biggest thing I believe we need to update are the fees and the fines. As we enforce the laws, we're finding that many of the businesses on Guam may not necessarily have an impact if we ping them and fine them. You know, it's a progressive fine, you know, the first time, second time, third time, and it gets larger, but it's not large enough where businesses feel empowered to do what's wrong. And so the issue we have is enforcement. When I became a board member, we only had 2 in compliance. Now we have 5. And yes, they go out periodically when they can, and they are doing it, and we're catching businesses and we're finding businesses. So it's working. We just need more manpower. We need more funding to do that. Tourists, someone said tourists. We need to modernize our laws because Guam is heavily impacted by income coming in by tourists. And I strongly believe that there has to be a separate ability to be able to sell alcohol to tourists in hotels versus the local population. That has an impact on our economy. And so if we put the same requirements for our local populace with our tourism industry, I think it's lopsided. You know, I think it's lopsided. And there's issues, not issues actually, but you know, tourists come in, they come off a plane, where they came from, maybe it's a different time zone. So they're thinking, oh, okay, it's like 5 o'clock p.m. here on Guam, I can buy a drink, and then they can't. But why not? You know, I think as long as there's protection, like they show their travel, their ticket, and that they're staying at a hotel, you know, issues with drunk driving and everything else, I think would not be a problem. So in the future, let's revisit tourism and how we can help our businesses with that.
Thank you.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, please go ahead, sir. I didn't know you were done.
Someone said drunken sailors. That's a law enforcement issue. That's not an ABC issue. That's not a legislature issue. That is drunken sailors on Tumon is a law enforcement issue. The issue that ABC has is when there's drunken sailors, therefore an establishment sold those sailors the alcoholic beverages. So ABC will go after that establishment, do an investigation, go after that establishment and determine, do their people have sufficient training? Is there a manager that's monitoring and supervising the people that are selling the alcohol? You know, there's a whole realm of issues, and then we can ping that establishment for not properly selling alcoholic beverages. But the drunken sailors thing, that's a law enforcement issue. That's a whole different matter. Yeah. But again, giving us the funding and the people to do our job, I think will lessen the impact of alcoholic beverages being consumed on the island of Guam.
Thank you, Renee. And Renee, by the way, you guys are doing a great job. I mean, I've been told too that you guys are really out there monitoring things, especially regarding COVID. I appreciate it. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, it brought another question to mind regarding the delivery. You know, what type of training or orientation, if any, will a delivery driver employed by a licensor holder and a third-party delivery service provider be required to compete with Bill 384 if it's approved? What kind of training? I mean, what will they be going through some kind of training just like anybody else who serves alcohol? I don't know if that's for public health because it's only food, but who would do that training? How about waitresses and waiters in bars? Do they go get their license at public health in order to serve alcohol? I mean, will these delivery people have that same type? Renee? Oh, Renee, unmute. Okay.
Can you ask that question again, please? Sorry.
What kind of training or orientation will these delivery individuals like Go, Grab, or Stroll, or all those other places who deliver the alcohol to the patron, what kind of training will they go through? Because most people go through a type of training before you can serve food or serve alcohol. Will they be required to?
They all get the same training, whether they're serving alcohol or they're delivering. If any time they're involved with alcohol beverages, they get the same general training. And oh, by the way, I wanted to say that there are 3 alcohol server training entities on Guam, right? And one of them, basically, we just approved to be able to do it online. And we went through almost a month process of back and forth, making sure that they have an SOP and they have a plan and everything else. So I'm proud to say that just recently, the board approved 1 of 3 to be able to do the training online, since you mentioned training. But training is the same. Training is the same for delivery versus someone who's serving. Yes.
Well, that's good to know, because that was my next question. With the lockdown and everything, how are they going to be trained so they can do this online safely, as long as they can do it safely? Well, thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity. Looking forward to the other testimonies, as he mentioned, a law enforcement issue. So looking forward to GPD's testimony as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Taitigui. Ms. Rhodes, did you want to add to that comment regarding training for drivers?
I just wanted to make a couple of comments actually, but with regards to specifically to training, GCC, GHRA, they have two types. It's called TAM and then TIPS. Those are approved by the ABC board. And it actually was written into law where online training was not allowable on Guam. So if the ABC board has approved that for online training, I believe both GCC and GHRA would probably be interested because all of our programs for TIPS and TAM are available. Also, ServeSafe has an alcohol license responsibly training program. So there are a lot more options with online, but when this was written into law and Senator Dennis Rodriguez passed this at the time, it was with the idea that we had to do face-to-face because of the importance of the responsibility portion of selling and serving the alcohol. But the delivery drivers would probably still be responsible for the seller portion because they're reselling it, right? Because they charge a fee to deliver that. And so it's the same amount of time. It's a 4-hour requirement, but I can tell you that it's not as expensive as other things, that those classes are about $30 inclusive of the government fee. So it's actually pretty reasonable, and that's for a 3-year license. So it's very reasonable with regards to getting that training and certification online, as well as for, you can even do it through Zoom. For face-to-face. But I wanted to just kind of make a comment with regards to both the tourists and the military. Again, I think we have to be careful in how we introduce or even discuss this, because we need to make sure that whatever laws we do pass identify, or it's fair to everybody, right? Hotels have tourists, military, and locals staying in the hotels. And so the laws apply to all of us. And so I can understand what Ray is referring to with regards to how tourists, like maybe the drinking age in Japan, right, is lower than Guam. But we didn't want to make this a complicated thing by introducing all those other pieces of legislation. That's actually not even germane to this process, to this bill. And so I'd like to kind of just ask that we only discuss the items here with regards to those amendments, because if we go down that road, it's going to take away the spirit and the intent of this bill. And just with regards to the military, I've been at GHRA 15 years, and I've worked with Shore Patrol whenever ships have come in, and with USO and the Guam Police Department. And I can tell you they're very well organized when it comes to handling situations with regards to alcohol. And so, you know, there's usually an ecosystem with both federal as well as military and local presence. And so as much as we'd like to say certain things about behaviors of people, I think that this is a community thing. But also, again, that's why we have the RASA Act in place, and it provides all the training and education that servers, establishments, and owners need to have to ensure that we protect our customer, our entire establishment, and all of our guests and the public. And so I don't think that we need to introduce any new legislation, because RASA took 3 years to go through the legislature and probably another 2 years to train and educate people. And so it's pretty comprehensive. There are extreme fines already in there, like $5,000 per offense. So, and it does escalate with the owner and establishment. So I think that those are already in place. And then one more thing again is the fees for on-premise and off-premise have already increased this last year to $1,000 without any changes to the amendments in the bill or to the laws. And so that is why we're asking that the laws be updated and modernized, because they have already increased the fees. So thank you again for your time today. And I know we're running out of time. So thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and our senators from the 35th Guam Legislature.
Thank you, Ms. Rhodes. So I'd like to open the floor to Senator Luis Muñoz, if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, as being a musician for most of my life, I have a soft spot in my heart for bar owners as well as I do restaurant owners. So I really do appreciate this opportunity to help them at this time. And I know that we're being quite specific about restaurants, like Mr. Lanetta said, but the opportunity for bar owners like Mr. Nelson and Ms. Beneventi to operate as well too is definitely welcome, because there are a lot of bars that are just struggling at this moment, not being able to open for the last few months. So any opportunity we can to help the business owners in general, as much as we can through this legislation, and I could see it, the intent. To update the law, though, now that's a whole different aspect of. And I understand GHRA, the chamber have been trying to do this for years, and so I could see how maybe we're kind of just banking on this bill to help business owners by allowing us to update the law as well. And I appreciate all of the input from everyone. There are a couple of things on the bill that I am, we want to strengthen this law. My concern were some of maybe the definition of, say, for example, delivery drivers. Does this also include delivery drivers, for example, like from the warehouse, of an establishment to another location? Does that also include them? So I think that the intent or the definition of a delivery driver has to be a little bit more specific, because that could also include, say, for example, someone who works for a wholesale company who delivers, alcohol from one premise to another. So that would probably be one of the areas that will probably have to be a little bit more specific in the intent of delivery, alcohol delivery. Also, and I understand there's some sections in the bill that are may instead of shall, like in incorporating, corkage fee, for example. So you could bring in your own bottle, and the establishment may incorporate a corkage fee. I did have a question for, there was an article that just came in from one of our biggest grocery markets, allowing now for online ordering and curbside delivery or pickup, if they started to incorporate delivery services for their grocery items, would this bill also include something like that, for example, for the grocery markets or mom and pop stores to include delivery of alcohol beverages? So I don't know if that could be for GHRA, chamber, or even for Mr. Lanetta. Would this be an opportunity for them to do that as well?
Grocery stores are already licensed for off-premise, so they would be able to sell off-premise. It can't be consumed in on-premise. So they're already licensed for that. If they sell alcohol, there are some stores that don't sell alcohol at all. So if they're already licensed for off-premise, then they're already licensed to sell it.
Okay, so then they would also have, if their delivery, if they were, for example, to order online, I have a grocery list, and this also includes I guess a couple of bottles of wine. If they included delivery services, would that delivery person have to go through a certain training in order for them to actually deliver that specific alcohol to? Okay,
yes,
so they
so
would also,
like a grocery store, even like a Circle K or a fuel station, if they're selling alcohol, the cashiers go through off-premise training. And so like one of our biggest trainers is actually 76, and they train a lot of off-premise, whether they're 76 or not. And so they already train the cashiers, and so the drivers would probably have to be trained as well. So that's all in-house, and that was one of our models with GHRA, is that we have a train the trainer program where those establishments have the trainers in-house. They don't have to pay the additional training fee. They only have to pay the license fee to the government. So that way they could save money on a per employee basis. So they train all in-house.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much for that. And I don't know if anybody else wanted to add, but I also wanted to move on to, you know, the stacking portion of the bill too. And I could see why Mr. Lanetta will probably cringe a little bit about eliminating that whole section of the law. I understand that offering buckets or a whole bottle, which I believe a bottle of wine is probably a misinterpretation of stacking, but a bucket. I could understand why a consumer would want to purchase a bucket, for example, if there are 6 people sitting at the table and they want to order a bucket of 6 beers, which would save them money as opposed to each one of them purchasing one bottle. So, and again, I think it has been mentioned that the server would have to identify what is a safe practice, because if you just see one person sitting there at the table, it would be that server's discretion to not serve a whole bucket of beer, for example, to that one consumer. So I could see how that could still be an important factor, whether this section is in the law or not, right? So there would still be safe serving practices as well too. Yeah, a lot of my questions were already answered, and I just want to acknowledge again all of the restaurant owners. We understand, and we're here with you. We're trying to help as much as we can, as well as the bar owners as well too. So thank you very much for everybody for participating here.
Thank you, Senator Muñoz. Is there anyone, Senator, oh, sorry, Mr. Lanetta, did you want to say something in response?
Yeah, I believe there's a purpose for the law on stacking, where you know, when someone buys a bucket of 6, you basically take that and you have no observation of that 6 and how it's consumed, but whether it's 6 for 6 people or it's 6 for 1 person. So I think it's important to have the ability for the establishments to be able to monitor how much alcohol is being consumed by an individual. So you lose that visibility when you give them a bucket of 6. But the way around it, of course, is you can buy a bucket of 6, but I give it to you one at a time. You know, so that you have a person physically observing them, giving them a bottle or whatever, you know. So I think there's a reason for that. I don't fully support the removal of stacking out of the law, especially if it's an on-site sale. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lanetta. I believe I have another colleague, Ms. Senator Torres, if you're still available, if you're interested in asking any questions or making comments. And you're still muted.
Yes, thank you. I've been listening intently, and generally I don't find this bill to be unreasonable, just in its simple read. And I think that many of the concerns that were raised about alcohol abuse and all of that really are for another arena. You know, I think one thing that, for example, we have an issue with alcohol being sold untaxed, to where there's, you know, very cheap liquor can be bought at mom and pop stores. And maybe that has more to do with people accessing alcohol and abusing it than what's being sold at the restaurants or the bars. The other point I want to make is that the people that have testified here, everyone here, are responsible business owners. They follow the laws, they're highly regulated, and they operate within the confines of regulation. So I wouldn't be inclined to make it harder on them to profit or to do to continue to do business and to thrive. And so in that regard, I would support, you know, any measure that makes business a little more friendly and a little more realistic for them to thrive, especially in circumstances where sales are very limited and, you know, capacity is limited. So I would be inclined to support this bill, and I would not be inclined to add further restrictions or make it harder on people who are law-abiding, responsible business owners who really have, done tremendous for not only employing people, but, paying taxes that sustain our economy. So in that regard, I would be inclined to do everything possible to help them, not make it harder for them to conduct business. But I think all the other things, all the other fallouts with, alcohol abuse or substance abuse really are not for this arena. I don't believe. And I think that there's a lot of things that we're not regulating on another end that I think have more of an impact on curbing alcohol abuse than simply this bill and what this bill is intended to do. So those were just general comments I want to make, but I can see all sides of it, and I think it makes for healthy discussion. But generally, I don't think that this is a bad bill. And in fact, when I was visited by the chamber people to discuss it when they were socializing it, many of the concerns that I had were addressed at that point. So I thank you also for socializing the bill, just to help everybody understand what its simple intent is. And I think it is pretty straightforward. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Senator Torres. Now I'd like to offer the floor to the sponsor of the bill for closing.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to first express that for many of you that don't know me, I used to work with Ray, the ABC chairman. Before he became chairman, I was the compliance supervisor for ABC. And I am familiar with Mayor Rhodes, especially when they started the Self-Server Act. And during that time, for many of the business owners that are here, are club owners, when I used to check out your bars, there was always an issue with stacking. And we've always stressed the ABC folks, and yes, revenue tax has a shortage of people. They've had a shortage of people for the past 10, 15 years, nothing new. Something that we've been trying to work with the director, trying to beef up their staff. But the Safe Server Act actually takes care of the issue of stacking. That's why it was added onto this bill, because it doesn't matter if you have the stacking or not, the server is responsible to make sure that individual doesn't become the drunk that goes out on the road. The next one, it also supported the issue that has been brought up for many years about the wine. When you're sitting at your best restaurant and you want to get your glass of wine or whatever you want to, and they put it in that bucket of ice, they don't want to be looking at trying to find a way of when's the server coming back to serve me back. I should be able to reach over there and pour it into my glass to serve to my wife or to my husband, whoever the customer happened to be. And then as you move along, when we talk about the issue of, enforcement, I'm also a former police officer. No different like Ray, he's a former military police officer. He knows what it deals with law enforcement. But you know what, folks? This bill was a very simple bill. Was trying to update it. Sure, many of you may feel that, oh, yeah, we didn't do decades of it. Well, you just think about it. This is all about helping everybody. And we got to go a piecemeal at a time when we deal with the ABC. Because if we want to look at the number of clubs that are authorized in certain areas, that bill was way back in the 50s. And that's where they did the restriction. It was based on the census. And that has been a major problem because Tumon is a very good example, or Tumuning, Tumon, and Harmon is one community alone. That one community alone is restricted. And when I was in the compliance, we used to find what they call the hole in the wall bars. And they would be selling them for like $20,000, $30,000. And why? It's for that license, that jewel that they could open a bar in Tumon. And the ironic thing is because of all the restrictions of the number of bars, if I'm correct, I think there was one in Agania that was in Tumon that moved to Agania, and they thought that because they were part of that limit, they can still open. I think it's Mosa. I think, Ray, you remember that? It was Mosa. They wanted to open up, and then we said, no, you have to be a restaurant. So there's many things that I'm quite familiar with, and this is all about helping the industry. We need to start thinking out of the box, folks. And I would hope my colleagues will. I'd like to thank you, Madam Chair, for hearing this bill. And to those who have joined us today as stakeholders in our process to build capacity for island businesses during this time. I look forward to the suggestions and amendments to better Bill 384-35 that will help our island business and in turn support your hardworking and dedicated employees and their family. Madam Chair, I ask that we work together in addressing these kinks, or the kinks that must be ironed out, so that we can get this bill on the session floor in the next session. And that's in November. And I would really appreciate that, Madam Chair. Thank you, Zeus Masi, for all this folks that attended this hearing today.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine, and thank you to everyone who had participated in this public hearing all this morning. I know it was a long time, but very important discussion. And yes, I'll be working with the sponsor of this bill to make any needed amendments. So Zeus Masi, everybody, and have a great day. And before I adjourn, further testimonies will be received by my office. You can email it to me at office@senatorperez.org. You can drop it off the mailboxes of the Guam Congress building. You need to address to me, Senator Sabina Perez, Chairperson of the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation and Procurement. And being that there's no further testimonies or questions, the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation and Procurement will adjourn this virtual public hearing. The time is now 11:48. Zeus Masi.